Hi again guys, CM back with another review video this time, and two videos in one day. I know, you guys are lucky. So, I've been wanting to do a review video on this tank for a little while. The VK7501K. Because I've been playing this tank a little bit on stream here and there, mostly for gun marks. And I figured I'd give you guys my 2 cents on it. So, premium tier 8 German heavy tank. This tank, okay, so basically what this is meant to be is a tier 8 VK4502B. Does it play out quite the same? The answer is no. And I'll go over why. First off, is your reload is so much longer than the VKB. Now sure, you do have 490 alpha on a tier 8 heavy, which is really nice as far as just raw alpha damage on a normal, standard AP or APCR gun, a non-derp basically. This is the highest as far as tier 8 goes. Now, obviously, that's going to have some kind of downsides to it, one of which is the reload time. You've got a base reload. Now, as far as I remember with tanks.gg, it works it out as being for a 100% crew. That's before any equipment or anything like that. So a base reload for 100% crew of 17.8 seconds. That is a very, very long reload, and it works out for pretty low DPM. As you can see, 1651 base. It's not very good. And the gun handling on this is pretty poor. So, you've got 0.39 dispersion at 100 meters base, 2.7 second aiming time, 0.28 and also 0.28 when moving and turning the tank, and turret reverse 0.17, 3 after firing and 2 when the gun is damaged. So it does take a little bit to aim, especially after you've had to stop moving, or of course when on the move. So yeah, this is definitely a gun that has to be fully aimed so you can get close to where it's hitting. Your shell velocity is not that great either, 920 on AP, and on APCR you have 1150 meters per second, which is not bad on APCR, but the AP is kinda potato, not gonna lie. It's like hurling 490 alpha potatoes at your targets. What is nice is that it does a lot of damage to modules when it pens, and if it hits them. So you might see that you're gonna set people on fire often if you do hit their fuel tanks or engine, or if you might break their ammo rack now and again. You'll definitely do that to some tier 6s, that's for sure. You do have decent pen on this gun as well for the tier. I see decent. It's around average. 226 AP and 263 APCR. Nothing particularly special. That falls right in line with similar kind of pen to the VK100 with its 128 mil gun, similar to the IS-3 with its 122. You guys get the picture. So, really long reload, pretty derpy gun that takes a while to aim. Does hit hard when it actually hits. So there's that, I guess. Does make decent credits, because while you do have fairly expensive shells, 490 alpha does make up for it. 30 km/h top speed. Next I'm going to move on to mobility. So it's not the slowest. Your power to weight's nothing special, but it's not the worst. Terrain resistances, again, nothing special here. You do turn relatively slowly, but one thing that'll let this tank down quite a lot and make it fairly fairly awkward to use at times is the gun depression. You only have 5 degrees. This comes from being a rear-mounted turret, mostly. So you might find yourself in some situations where gun depression is not going to treat you well. I'll move on to the armor in a moment. I'm going to use the 3D model to show these. Now, tanks.gg have still not fixed this after this has been in the game for a good couple of patches now. And so I'll get back to that in a moment. 1600 health is not bad. I tend to find, by the way, that the engine on this is very easily damaged. Very easy to set this thing on fire. Ammo rack is what it is. It's not the weakest ammo rack in the world, but it can be a bit frustrating at times. Right, so moving on from there, 380 base view range is not bad at all. You can definitely get that up to a decent level with crew skills and optics, as well as maybe food if you decide to use it. So let's move on to the armor. Now, obviously, as you can see, tanks.gg haven't fixed this, so I'll try and go over this the best I can with just the visual model. So, your lower plate, effective is about 170 to 180, maybe at an angle closer to about 198. So lower tiers will bounce on it, but depending on the angle, most things are going to pen it without too much trouble. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is about 170, so yeah. Expect to get penned there a lot if you show it. Obviously, because Wargaming are making models a bit more simple, machine gun port is not a weak spot. Then your cupola. Okay, so the cupola is going to be your second main weak spot. So you've got the lower plate and you've got the cupola as your main frontal weak spots. The cupola is horrendously weak on this thing. Compare it to the VK100, which gets about 220, 230 frontal on the cupola. This thing, on this part here, it's 150 in thickness. Rounds out a little more. At most, it gets to about 160, 170 out towards here. But the main problem is the little dome on the top. So at the front, that's maybe about 90. On the top, though, you've got a raw thick. So basically, you see where these vision slots are, right? That's about 40 millimeters. So yeah, you're gonna get overmatched there by anything bigger than a 120. So good luck. Also, your turret roof is hilariously weak. You can overmatch your own turret roof. Again, you're only about 40 millimeters there, so if your tank is even slightly angled down on a slope, or if you're facing one of these and you've got a 122 millimeter gun or bigger, yeah, you're gonna have a good time with that. Side on, I mean, okay, so unlike the Leva, by the way, you see how the little turret bulge sticks out there from the turret ring? That's actually not a weak spot on this tank. So you can actually side scrape fairly effectively. The only problem is that you have to side scrape like this. So you're basically using a wall to hide your cupola. Because that cupola is going to be your worst enemy. Because it's super easy to pin. Super, super easy. I have no problems hitting this, even at mid-range. Long range, you're going to struggle a little bit, but mid to close range, it's not a difficult target at all. Now, obviously, the lower plate is bigger, so that's the easiest to hide when side scraping, but that cupola is going to be your an absolute nightmare for you at times. So you're going to want to have a corner where you're angled like this, basically, so then you can make the most out of your side armor. Now, the turret, do not angle this turret at all. Because unlike the mouse, and the Motion, and the VK168, this turret gets weaker as you angle it, much like the VK100, much like the VK4502B, much like the Tiger II. So, you want to keep this as... You want to keep this part as in line with the corner as you can. So, you want this part hidden with the... Like, you want this part to be the only bit showing, basically. But you also don't want to have it as angled as this, because people will start penning you here. So you want to be kind of like this, if that makes sense, because that maximizes this, and makes you a much tougher target. Also, side note, you can actually get overmatched. So if I zoom in a bit here, so you guys see this underside here, just above the tracks. That can be overmatched by guns that are over 136 millimeters in caliber, as far as I remember. So your 150s, 152s, 155s. If you're side scraping against those, you do have to be very careful and very lucky, because that part extends all the way back here, and it gets easier and easier to hit. And it can track and pen you at the same time. So if you're sitting like against the T95, you're kind of like this, because he's lower than you. So if you're side scraping, he can quite easily aim right here, track you, pen you, and 750 alpha. So you kind of want to be like this against them, if that makes sense, against your big guns. Alright, so on to the replay. So here we have... I had to actually use someone else's replay for this, because my replay that I had a great game in was from the previous patch, so of course Wargaming broke it. Here we have Hollowman 12, we're on the EU server, on a top tier match, actually I'll say top tier, nearly top tier, you've only got 2 tier 9s per team, on Ghost Town, and it's Assault. Now, so this is going to be a fairly quick match, because obviously a maximum of 10 minutes for an Assault game. Now, he's actually using mostly AP, he's only got 5 APCR, but in this kind of matchup, where there's not actually any armor on either team, really the most heavily armored tanks on the enemy team are the Lerva and the Centurion. And even then, the Centurion really only when he's hull down pointed at you, and the same with the Lerva or the upper plate. Oh, speaking of the upper plate on this tank, I did miss that. It is relatively strong, it's about 280, 290, so some heat shells will still go through, like from the SU-130 and some of your tier 9s. But obviously angled, it does become a bit better. So I'm just going to follow what he's aiming at. So he's looking to get shots on the T-71 here. He is angled a little bit as if he's going towards the next corner. Now, and he also spots the Pantera here. This Hollowman does not have the best crew. I would imagine he's got equipment on this thing. So probably a gun rammer, and maybe vert stabs and optics, which is the optimal combo here. He gets the spotting on the Pantera, or at least a little bit of it. And a good meaty shot. 577, which is a monstrously high roll. Bit of a poor poke from here, but he wasn't expecting to see them there quite so early, I would imagine. Takes a hit from the Lerva. Not a difficult pen for the Lerva at that angle. But this is the position where you want to be in, guys. So if I can zoom out at all. So there we go. So you guys can sort of see, in fact the camera's kind of bugging out on me here, so I gotta zoom out a bit. So if I go top-wise, you guys can see he's got the corner here. He's got the cupola pretty much entirely hidden by this corner. And of course the lower plate. Now this is slightly over-angled, but against the tanks he's facing there, he's actually got no problem at all. He's angled for the Lerva more than anything else, so for the Lerva it's not a pen angle. For those guys, like the Tiger P, well, they can't pen it because they don't have enough pen, but if it was maybe like another VK firing APCR, then yes, this would be over-angled. So you do kind of have to be careful with these angles. But against the Lerva, perfectly angled. Does kind of donk the shot there. Again, this is a gun that really kind of depends on you getting the shot fully aimed, but obviously he was trying to rush the shot there because the Lerva was firing, and he didn't want to stay over-angled against the Tiger P too long. Now here we see obviously something that's going to annoy you a lot. Arty, you are a big target. You've got a rear-mounted turret, so Arty, if it hits the turret front, is going to hurt. As we see another big old high roll into the Lerva. In fact, he's only high rolled so far, which is one of the nice things about this gun. 490 Alpha does mean that you can roll very high indeed. And another high roll. 3 in a row. Can I have this guy's RNG? Because this gun, oh boy, it doesn't high roll like that for me very often. It tends to stick around the 490 to 480 range for me. So average or low. There's our first low roll. Of course, like any gun, it can roll pretty low at times for the alpha damage. Lerva donks his shot. And then the Scorpion puts a shot into the Lerva, and he gets out the way of the Scorpion just in case the Lerva fires, but doesn't have to worry because the Lerva was still reloading. So far we're on just over 2,500 damage, 2,000 blocked, and a couple hundred assistance. Gets a lot more assistance on the Tiger, and then gets the shot on the Stuart Emil. That was actually not that bad a shot. It wasn't a particularly long range shot, it wasn't particularly short either. I'd say maybe mid range, so that's probably where you want to be with this gun most of the time. You want to keep your opponents at range if you're not in good cover. Now obviously the T-29 here, he's got no chance. So Hollowman here just backing up because the T-29 is not paying him any attention. Looks like the E50 or Tiger 1 are just HEing him to keep him tracked. So friendly Scorpion blasts him, and then Hollowman gets the kill. Up to 3 kills, 3,300 damage. T-25-2 actually seems to be camping in the bushes. And there's another shot from Arty. This match, by the way, I picked out as being kind of a best case scenario kind of game for this tank as far as positioning, and also what you're fighting. Because if you're fighting some heavily armored tanks, you're going to actually have a tough time here and there. Depends on the situation, of course, because this tank is very situational. But you will have times when you can do some good bounces, like when he was hiding his cupola against the Lerva and the Tiger P. Now, looking for a shot on the Scorpion. Got a little bit of waiting here before anything happens, but being Assault, obviously, people are wanting to do things. Not much of a shot on the Scorpion there. He was actually pretty well hidden against him, but of course his team claps the guy for most of his health. Now, at this point, being Assault, I would be tempted to push, although knowing that the UDES is not spotted, and has not been spotted all match, is kinda dissuading him from doing anything here. So he's kinda waiting for his team to get some spots off. He's waiting for the E50, he's waiting for the Scorpion, the Tigers, and of course the two TDs you can see there on A4. Now he's expecting the UDES to be into that bush, or one of the bushes over there, so a bit of a blind shot. Spoiler alert, that didn't hit. You're gonna see where the UDES turns out to be later on. Doesn't get spotted though, which probably means the UDES is too far back to actually see him. Goes for another blind shot, using HE to save him a little bit of credits. Or to at least get a splash on someone, maybe splash the UDES. Or the Batchat 25 TAP, who again has not been spotted, but is now clipping the Tiger 1. There goes the Tiger 1. Batchat finishes him off after the arty tracks him. Friendly Scorpion finishes the arty. Only 4 minutes left, so this is gonna have to have a few things done. So he's finally decided that, well, he's not being spotted by the UDES, so he's gonna have to make a play here. He's got HE loaded for the Scorpion, because he knows the Scorpion is still down here, because the Scorpion had poked on the A line here. He would have been spotted by the Challenger. And if he poked here, he would probably have been spotted by these guys, or by himself. So as you can see, Scorpion tried to poke against the Challenger, misses the shot. And Hollowman goes in, also aims. Very lucky there to actually hit where he was aiming, because those tracks can actually be kind of troll. Gets the penning shot on the Scorpion, finishes him off, spots the arty and the UDES. Now his cupola was just high enough to spot the UDES, as was the driver's hatch. So he gets the spotting there. Good chunk of spotting after the Scorpion blasts him, and the other Scorpion finishes him off. Now getting a second shot on the arty after the first one didn't pen. Looks like it hit the tracks with the first shot. So up to 5 kills, just under 4,000 damage. Only 2 tanks left on the enemy team. The Batchat AP and the T25-2. T25-2 has been spotted at one point, but he has not been seen in a while. And the Batchat AP, he's not been seen at all, it seems like. Here he is asking for 1 kill for the Top Gun. I mean, you can ask, but sometimes you just gotta accept that people are just not gonna give you it. It's nice when they do, but they're not always gonna do it. Now looking for the T25-2 and the Batchat. Obviously, going into their spawn because, well, I mean, look at all the bushes that the enemy team can use to cover the cap circle. It's not surprising that people camp this side of the map on Assault, and this is actually why I don't play Assault, because I feel that it's a bit too campy at times. Now, T25-2, he was over here somewhere, going towards last spotted location, and also he took a bounce from the T25 from over here somewhere, earlier, remember. Gets spotted. That's the Batchat AP that is shooting him. 2 hits, APCR. Bounces the third, very lucky. You can actually see, obviously, being a rear-mounted turret. Engine in the front does really kind of make things awkward. Gets lucky enough to hide the lower plate from the Batchat and bounces the next couple of shots. Takes a hit from the T25. Very lucky, that's a low roll. Angles towards him. Waits for the teammates to put shots in to get the Top Gun. Gets the spotting anyway, so that's not bad on marks. Also, heads up, guys, this is actually my gun marks that it's showing. It's not going to show his. In fact, I don't know what he's on for gun marks in this thing, so yeah. Did get a very lucky shot into the bat chat, because that was not a big target, and it was fairly decent range. Not long range, again, mid-range. Low roll from him, though, 441, 490 alpha gun. Bat chat kills the E50, but at this point, nice high roll from Hollowman there into the upper plate. Bat chat AP has no armor, so that's an easy pen. And then the challenger comes up behind and finishes him off with 20 seconds to go. So GG to Hollowman there, and of course his team for that one. And that actually turned out to be an ace for Hollowman. Got himself an ace tanker, Spartan medal for bouncing shots on low health, steel wall for bouncing the most hits, at least 11, with a potential damage of at least 1,000 hit points and surviving. High caliber for his 5,010 damage, and of course the top gun. 5,010 damage, 6 kills, 1,733 base XP. The friendly Scorpion as well had a good match, almost 4,000 damage from him and 1,000 base XP there. Hollowman also bounced 3,000 damage and did just over 2,100 assistance in total, so well played to him. Bit gutting for the enemy bat chat. He was actually doing some good farming late game there, but unfortunately for him, his team weren't also, well, he did kind of play a bit too slow and a bit too passive for his tank, which is basically just a light tank anyway. So GG to Hollowman and the Scorpion there. His team didn't do too bad overall, but it was really him and the Scorpion, the stars of the show here, and made a good bit of credits as well, firing mostly AP. So 109,000 credits. I would expect that's with a booster of some sort, because it started out on 103,335. Although that said, it looks like wotreplays could be just mistaking how much he got as for his premium account, so that might be all that is. Also, yeah, it's definitely wotreplays derping out, because yeah, that's not quite correct here either, but decent chunk of XP for it as well, so I'm sure he was very happy with that match. So GG Hollowman, and again guys, that was kind of your best case scenario for this tank. I find a lot of the time that people have no trouble countering this thing, unless they're in a tier 6, in which case, you know, well, enjoy feeding your hit points to this thing like most +2 matchmaking. But to be honest, it's very specific the situations this thing does well in. You need to be side scraping in such a way that you hide the cupola, because otherwise your aim time is pretty long, and people are just gonna yeet shots into your cupola without too much trouble, particularly at mid to close range. So yeah, the lower plate being quite a big shot at mid to long range, yeah, it means it is quite specific. But when it works, it can really hit hard with that gun. So overall, is this a good tank? No. Is it balanced? Sorta. Would I say, what do I think this tank needs? Right, so this tank, I feel the cupola needs a buff, and I would maybe say buff the engine health and the fuel tank health, just because being front mounted means you're gonna get shot there a lot, so I would say buff that, and maybe at most buff the gun handling a bit, because let's face it, it's trash as far as gun handling. And that's it. Otherwise, the armor's fine, the upper plate is fine, the lower plate is fine, turret front is fine. It's literally just the cupola that I feel needs a bit of a buff as far as armor. But that's it. Mobility, I'd say, is fine. So yeah, overall, relatively well balanced. Just needs a little bit of a buff to the cupola, the engine health, and fuel tank health, and then a little bit of gun handling. I would maybe make it 2.4, 2.5 second base aim time rather than 2.7, and that would probably be it. Anyway guys, that's all from me for this one. 2 videos today, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys on the next one.